up that says it's being recorded. If I did it right. Yeah, okay. All right. So good afternoon. It's good to see everybody on this call today. Welcome to our virtual leadership course that's for the Rend Lake graduates and also our senior leaders, which are the directors and above in AIC operations. So it's really good to have this program. It's going to be co-instructed by a teammate from the program, as well as a selected director each week. This week is Brian Brackney. So I'm really thrilled at what it is that we're doing this year. We're continuing to partner with the program, and we've got a lot of neat things in store for this year to continue to develop ourselves and our subordinates to be more effective team leaders and effective teammates. So a lot that we can do together and working with our subordinates. I fully expect us to be the safest, most operationally excellent utility in the nation. We have the ability to do that. We have the skills, the wherewithal, the commitment, the desire to do that. And so we just got to keep using what it is that we've learned and sharing that with our subordinates and helping them along as well. And we're going to achieve some great things together. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be said with this group, because I know time after time we've gotten together and have performed very well as far as the standards, but I am going to go through it because this is important. This is an 8-week course, so we're going to hold ourselves accountable to certain standards of performance during our participation during these courses. The first one, obviously, is attendance, making attendance a priority in participation. And you've gotten an email from me that gives you links to other meetings if you can't attend for whatever reason your assigned group. But we want to make sure that this is a priority. It's a priority for our senior leaders. It's a priority for us. We're going to check in just as you did today, make sure everything's working well, and be ready to start the session on time. We're also going to be engaged. We're not going to be doing other things, not trying to do emails while we're trying to pay attention to this. So we're all focused. We're being here now, certainly not driving the car. We're stationary, we're plugged in, we're engaged. We're going to have the video on at all times. For those that are participating, those that are assigned to this group, we want you to have your video on at all times. Now, there's going to be some observers, myself included, that after I'm done here, we're going to go dark. We're not going to have the video on. That's primarily to make sure that your workspace has all the video of the participants in the course. That's the real reason for doing that. It frees up workspace for that. But we'll be listening in. So once again, if you're a participant, we want the video on. Of course, we're going to keep silent if we're not talking. The other thing we need to do is make sure we're prepared in advance. That means reading the book section that we're going to be talking about. If there's any homework that we need to do, we'll have all that done as well. Note taking, that sort of thing. And most of all, participate and contribute during the sessions. You all know, you've been through this before. We all learn together. It makes things more beneficial if we're all engaged. So please, my desire is to see that everybody is engaged. As I said, this is the first week of 8. This group will be meeting each Tuesday at this time slot for the next foreseeable future into late April. There will be some people that'll come and go and join the group because they're like you, may have to join a different meeting that week because of conflicts. But this is the base team for this particular time slot. This week we're going to be covering creating a championship culture. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to our facilitator, Omri. And Omri, it's yours.
Thanks, Don. Good afternoon, teammates. Great to meet everyone. Fired up to be here on the call with you. Before we start, if you guys are not muted, if you can just mute yourself so that we make sure there's no audio interruptions as we go through this. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Omri Rahmout. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, Israel. After graduating high school, I joined the Israeli Defense Forces, where I served as a paratrooper for 3 years. I started my service as a combat medic, then moved on to become a team leader, and had the privilege of serving in the battalion's front command chain as a radio operator for the battalion commander. I served in combat tours to the Gaza Strip, including Operation Cast Lead in December 2008, then moved on to defend Israel's northern borders with Syria and Lebanon in the fight against Hezbollah, and conducted multiple counter-terrorist operations in the West Bank. I currently reside in Lyons, Colorado. I came out here in pursuit of big mountain sports. I'm a rock climber, mountain biker, high altitude mountaineer, currently in pursuit of summiting all of Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks. I'm an avid martial artist, been practicing Muay Thai and Dutch kickboxing since a very young age. And most importantly, I'm a proud teammate of the program, and again, fired up to be here with you for this 8-week process. So I'm going to just reiterate a couple things that I want to make sure that we're on point with as a team. Number one, we're going to make sure that we're sitting at the desk. Our videos are going to be on. The expectations, right? Let's set the expectation, make sure we're crushing this together as a team. Participation, we're going to participate as much and as often as we can, and not get into a habit of kind of letting someone take the team and carry the team. The second one is going to be our note taking. The reason those two things are super important for me that we do as a team right now are this. Number one, the material that we are going to go over is going to be reviewed at the beginning of each session. At the end of the curriculum, session number 8 is going to be a review, more of a test, that we are then going to rank this team in comparison to all other teams going into this curriculum. So we're looking at a little bit of a competition. Now, you will be evaluated by the grade that the team will achieve at the end of the 8th week. However, that's not the only thing we are going to evaluate you on. Meaning, we want to see participation. We want to see how prepared we are each and every session, and not just in that last stretch. So we're going to make sure that we're on this. One last point before I hand this over. We're going to be heading into breakout rooms throughout this. We don't want this to be a presentation. We want this to be more of a discussion. When we're moving into these breakout rooms, there could be a possibility that some observers are going to be in those rooms with us. In that case, if their videos are not on, they're not going to be a part of the discussion. Each group, each breakout room is going to have a representative that's going to be in charge of 2 things. Number one, summarizing the discussion points, and then and then presenting it to the entire team once we're out of the breakout rooms. The second is making sure that you're aware of the time. We're going to be in those breakout rooms for 7 minutes. Let's just make sure that we're taking into account how much time has gone by, how much time we have left. That's it for me. On that note, I'd love to hand this over to Brian. Brian, the floor is yours. Let's do it.
Thank you, Omri. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm looking here. I think I probably know or met all of you, but just in case I'm missing somebody, I'm Brian Brackney. I'm the director of the North Electric region. Been with the company 28 years. I was a lineman and crew leader the first 15 of that, and in the last 13, I've been in various leadership roles in 3 of the 4 regions, including the South down there for a little while with some of you guys in the Marion area. So it's good to see you all. I'm really excited for this. I've enjoyed this more than I thought I would. Honestly, it's really been great to interact with people you don't see every day. So I am looking forward to this. Like any training, we're going to get out of it what you put into it. So I do ask you to be engaged and take part, and we'll be better leaders for it when this is over. Corey?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And I realize I do know most of you. Rick, this is my first time meeting you, I think. And so I will give a short introduction just so that you know who I am and where I come from. Everybody else, it's great to see y'all. And before I start with that, I would like to say many of you have been through Rend Lake, have experienced our experiential training, for lack of a better word. And you're probably thinking, why are we doing a virtual version? Like, we've done the real version. Well, I would disagree with that. You did do the in-person version, and we learned some very good lessons in the sand and, around the fire and all of that. but we only skim the surface. And what I will offer to you is this: you'll be challenged over the next 8 weeks, and you'll do a deeper dive into every one of those topics that we talked about during the week at Wren Lake. So don't think this is a repeat. So far, in the 45 folks that have come through up to this point in the week, we don't all have, these learning points kind of committed to memory. And if that's the case, then we do have some work to do. So I would say that take this as a challenge. As far as my background goes, 20 years in the Marine Corps, which is, I do have my uniform up behind me, as Jeff pointed out, not so that I can beat my chest, but so that you know where I got my passion for leadership. I've been thinking about that ever since Jeff said that. And so in my 20 years, I spent 12 years as an infantryman, and then another 8 years being a tank platoon commander, executive officer, and then as a special operations advisor, where I spoke the Afghan language and deployed in and out of Afghanistan over a period of 5 years. 2 years of it on the ground, working with local village elders with the big white beards, district governors, police chiefs, and building security and stability at the lowest level in Afghanistan. I've now been a proud teammate at the program for 6 years. I've been with AMRIN a third of that time, which is crazy to me. And I love the fact that that's the case. And so it's just awesome to see all you guys today. And I'll turn it back to you, Brian.
All right, thank you, Corey. All right, guys, we're going to dive right in here and get some juices flowing, get us thinking, get us talking a little bit. We're going to go right to our first breakout room. So again, quick reminders that Omri covered in the breakout session. Don will send us there when the time's right here. You don't need to click on anything on your screen. Just sit tight. There is a little bit of a lag, but you will be sent to your breakout room. Once you get there, please decide who your spokesperson is. When we come back to the larger room, we're going to report out from each group, and so we need to know who the spokesperson is in that group. In the breakout room, watch your time. It's going to be 7 minutes, and in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little running clock there. You can see about where we're at. And then finally, as was mentioned, there may be some names at the bottom whose cameras are not on. We do have people here observing, so don't wait for them to turn their cameras on to start engaging with those in your breakout room. Just wait for the 3 or 4 faces to show up and get started. Okay, so here we go. What we want to do is, again, this session is on creating a championship culture. But before we get down the path of what all leads to that, let's just start with culture. Define it. What is culture? AMRIN, outside AMRIN, whatever you want to talk about, just define culture for us and let's be ready to talk about it. So put your seatbelts on and here we go. Don, take us to our breakout rooms.
Okay, so what just happened there?
Jeff, I'm going to need you to talk a little bit quieter in your small group next time, because all we could hear was your definition of culture.
All I could hear was you guys talking through Gisher's computer.
All right, guys, it looks like we're all back. So I need a spokesperson. Who can define culture for us?
Crystal.
Sure, I absolutely can. So in our group, when we were discussing culture, we kind of refer to it as a shared values, experiences, common beliefs, things like that, all kind of put together, that kind of form and shape the behaviors we have and drive the actions we have as a group, whether it's at work, home, whatever. But it's kind of, some of them are unspoken, but it's, generally those shared things that we kind of put together that drives us the direction we're going to go.
Good. I like that one. Nice job, team. Good job, Crystal. Who else? Who's another spokesperson? I can't see everybody, guys, so please just call out and.
Yeah, Brian, this Rick Walton.
Hey, Rick.
I can speak for our group. I thought it was interesting. We didn't necessarily talk about culture in a real broad sense, but we just talked about it in the aspect that safety is our primary culture here at Ameren. And then we talked a little bit about the fact that what that means, that we're all on the same page, that we're all striving for the same goals. We talked a little bit about the standards and expectations that go along with that, and we said that's still a work in progress. We're not where we want to be yet over Ameren, Illinois overall. And that one of the things that was identified that we need to work on is a unified message. And that was just be it from, say, maybe from the safety group or from distribution control office or whatever, where they come out, they share information with the supervisor, but then it's up to the supervisor to know everything there is to know about that, to be able to share it with the work group. And so our example was that sometimes that's better if the people that made those policies and made those distinctions, if they're the ones that are helping deliver the message. That way we get a more unified message across Ameren.
Yeah, that's really good, Rick. A lot of that's going to be what we're going to talk about here in the next hour or so, sort of the things that build up to having that championship culture. And so, it's important that all of our employees know what our values are, know what behaviors we expect, what our standards are that need to be met. All those things build up to this championship culture. So I think that's a really good answer. It's a little more than just culture we were looking for, but that is where we're headed with this conversation in the next hour.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Rick. Who's my final spokesperson?
I guess I can do it for our group. We're just talking about trying to define what culture is. It's a predefined set of behaviors, something that needs to be upheld first, which will essentially drive our goals that we may or may not reach on a daily basis. But those are what drive our behaviors. They can be, learned at a young age, inherited, learned at a later age. And it really just kind of can help define how a group works together.
Great, Jeff.
Goals.
Yep. Thank you for that. I said last spokesperson, and the last group, there were 4 groups. So I'm sorry. Is there one more spokesperson out there, or is it 3?
I think Jason, Simic, and Don were in their own little hallway. They weren't actually in a classroom.
Yes, due to technology issues, it was Don and I talking, and basically what I shared with Don of my view about culture is really it's a behavior and actions that collectively we exhibit based on our ethics, our values, our morals, maybe our goals or our attitudes even, that define our culture. And so if it's a shared culture, then we all have to have some sort of commonalities with that. Is basically how I defined it to Don.
Yeah, that's really good, Jason. Thanks for that. And yeah, so again, everybody's on the right frame of mind here for this. And so just touching on Project Unfreeze real quick. I think we've all had it and maybe even been refreshed on it here recently, but Project Unfreeze would tell us it's a shared set of beliefs, habits, or behaviors. Okay, and then if you remember the results cone, it talks about thinking drives results, thinking drives behaviors, drives results. So all in all, everything we just said there is spot on for what culture is. So with that, Corey, I'm going to turn it over to you to take us to the next chapter.
Thanks, Brian. 5 hours after this photo was taken, Sergeant Aaron Whitman would be killed in action. As you read in the book, the 20-man special operations team that I was attached to in Afghanistan was on a vehicular mounted patrol on January 10th, 2013 at the foothills of the Tora Bora Mountains right here in eastern Afghanistan. You might remember Tora Bora. It's where we lost Osama bin Laden in 2001. And then fast forward 12 years later, we're fighting some of the same people in the same mountains. And as we came to that hairpin turn in the road that you read about, we're in these big, heavy armored trucks. And the enemy then hits us right there on purpose. It was planned, a planned ambush. They had set in and waited for us. And they hit us with rifle fire, machine gun fire, and rocket propelled grenades at very close range, 50 meters, so half a football field if you want to envision that in your mind. And just to give a little bit more color to the picture, the weapons they were using, they don't even have sights that go down to 50 meters. So this is just point and shoot, and we're in the kill zone. The only one to see where the enemy fire was coming from was my gunner, who I pictured a minute ago, Sergeant Aaron Whitman. And he sees the enemy and immediately turns his big, heavy armored turret into the direction of the enemy graveyard that they're hiding in, ironically. And so at that moment, any normal person on a normal team, without that championship culture that we're getting at here today, would have two choices. So a normal person on a normal team with no culture, no drive to be that elite team. Choice number one would be to duck down inside the turret, reach up, and still be able to fire that 50 caliber machine gun into the general vicinity of the enemy, probably keeping their heads down, maybe. And then choice number two would be to look down the barrel of that 50 caliber and walk your rounds. We call it walking the bullets into the teeth of the enemy. And the reason that you would do that is so that you can make sure that your rounds are having an effect, and in so protecting the teammates to your left and to your right. And of course, if you read the book, that's what Aaron chose to do. But if you ask him, he didn't have a choice. If you were to be able to ask him after the fact, how were you able to act so heroically in that moment? He would tell you, but that's just how we do things. And many of you said that. It's how we do things. It's a shared values, actions, and behaviors, Crystal says. And so he would tell you the same thing if he were alive today. And Aaron Whitman gave his life in that moment. He gave 8 rounds to the enemy, 8 big 50 caliber rounds to the enemy before he was cut down by a direct hit from a rocket propelled grenade, which literally cut his body in half and then wounded or knocked unconscious everybody else inside our truck as it exploded up against the back of his turret. My driver, a 19-year-old kid, Private First Class Potter, 19 years old. Think about some of the ages of your kids, right? I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. So right there, one of the kids these days that we all hear about, PFC Potter, was wounded with a 4-inch piece of hot metal when that rocket exploded. And despite that wound, that hot shrapnel sticking out of his arm, he continued driving our vehicle, got us out of the kill zone so that we could all turn and fight back. He did that for 2 reasons. Number one, it was his job, so he kept doing his job. And number 2, it was our culture. And our culture was selflessness and courage in the face of adversity. And so instead of thinking about himself and screaming out, hey, I'm hit, or I need a medic, or something like that that you would hear in the movies, PFC Potter just kept driving. And I tell him that yearly. I reach out to PFC Potter and I say, hey, man, just want you to know I told a story about you today. I told a story so that we could all get better because of the example that you set. But he didn't rise to the occasion. He did that because in the days and the weeks and the months before that, he also showed those selfless behaviors in everything that he did. The guy in the rear right seat of my truck, Sergeant First Class Sean Harris, he's severely concussed and knocked unconscious briefly by the blast. As soon as he woke up, think about what you would do when you wake up from that, a rocket blast. You would check yourself, right? You would make sure you're okay. Sean Harris doesn't do that. He looks over and immediately reaches for my gunner, who's slumped over at that moment. He's quickly passing away, and Sean literally puts him back together, takes his vital signs, and then passes that information off to our medic as he arrived at truck number 4. Then, again, Sean had a choice. He could have chosen to stay in that vehicle and nobody would judge him for it. But the culture of our team was, what next? What can I do to help? So he jumps out of the vehicle, finds a machine gun, gets behind it, and starts laying down devastating fire into the enemy's fighting position, again, just 50 meters away from our truck. The single most important act that occurred that day and allowed us to be successful and win that fight was what Sean Harris did. And it wasn't his job. We, as supervisors, directors, superintendents, will ask people to do things that aren't necessarily their job, and we'll get pushback for it. Right? Well, that's not in my contract. Yeah, but it needs to be done. In order to provide power safely and efficiently, if you see something on a job site, you have to say something. Right? We're going to ask people to do things that aren't necessarily their job. Sean didn't have to get on that machine gun, but he did it. And if you asked him why, he said he would say he had no choice. It needed to be done. Myself and my teammate, Staff Sergeant Powell, who had been standing in the back of this big heavy armored truck in the bed of it, were both knocked to the floor faster than you could jump to the floor if you tried to jump out of your seat right now. That's how hard that rocket knocked us to the floor. Him on top of me, 280 pounds of his body, his ammunition, and all of his equipment lay seemingly dead on top of me. The reason I say that is because the first thing I saw when I woke up was my gunner, who was quickly passing away. So the first thing I thought was that this heavy weight must be another dead teammate. So I start to try to move out from under him. And when I moved, he started to literally cry out. I mean, he was crying out in pain. Something about the sound of his voice, though, told me that he was alive enough to get back behind his 50 caliber machine gun, which is right here. And so I kind of propped him up behind it, pointed him in the direction of the enemy, and then just told him when to fire and when to fire faster. And he did that. For the next 2 hours, Staff Sergeant Powell just kept engaging. He allowed us to land a helicopter by providing cover fire, take away our wounded and our killed teammate off the battlefield. He never asked to be evacuated himself, even though he was severely wounded and hadn't said a word about it. Only when we got back to our forward operating base after he assisted me in driving this bloody and disabled vehicle for 2 more hours, only then did we find out why he had cried out in pain. Staff Sergeant Powell had a broken back and a broken jaw. Never said a word. Didn't ask to be evacuated even then when we were back in the safety of our base. I tell you this story, lady and gentlemen, because the reason we were able to be successful that day was not because anybody rose to the occasion and magically became a hero. It was our culture. It was a culture that everybody knew. We highlighted it at every opportunity when we saw selfless acts, when we saw courageous acts. And we talk about courage at Ameren, having the courage to lead and the courage to be a good teammate. It's not easy, but we survived that day because of our culture. And not only survived, we won that fight despite losing 40% of our team, 7 out of 20, wounded or killed. I share this with you today because we're going to dig deep into culture. And how do we instill those behaviors, as Crystal and several other people said, in the very lowest level, the newest person at Ameren? Brian?
Thank you, Corey. All right, gang. So hazards exist in the work we do. We know this and we prepare for this. So we're ready every day, no matter what situation or job we're on, to recognize hazards and mitigate them. We do this through training, through a series of best practices and behaviors that meet our standards. And just like Corey's story, often if you think about it, we're ambushed too, right? This can present itself in the form of a thunderstorm, an ice storm, some other weather event. We may or may not be given advance notice. And again, we get attacked by weather, if you want to say it that way. We also have these situations come up not related to weather. And I'll share an experience with my team about 10 days ago. Friday came, end of the week, everybody went on their way, had their nice Friday evening, whatever that was, family night, date night, whatever we do. And by 5 o'clock the next morning, the phones are ringing. In Bloomington Normal, a freight train had derailed. 20 to 25 cars came off the track, uncoupled, broke a couple of our poles, and we had 3 railroad cars hovering over a substation being held in place by down guys. So again, nobody planned for that. Nobody expected that. But when the bell rang, everybody answered it and came in. And we didn't rise to the occasion, as Corey just mentioned. We were able to successfully and safely get through that situation because of the daily best practices and behaviors that we enforce and we expect from our workforce. So it's that type of culture Corey mentioned with his team that's embedded in them, and I believe is embedded in us. And we're going to work further here to talk about what exactly goes into a championship culture. Corey?
As you look here at this slide, this is not the only answer, but it's derived from the elements of this championship culture are derived from not only our experiences working with special operations forces in combat situations, but also with the 1,000+ teams that we've worked with at the program over more than a decade in business. And not all of them were championship cultures. In fact, the minority were championship cultures, but those common elements among them are these. The foundation is those best people who we'll talk about in depth. And then goals and standards and knowing the difference between them. An elite team has both. And then finally, all of that is just words on a wall if we don't have a commitment to it. An everyday commitment down to the coworker to hold each other accountable to our culture, our goals, and our standards. Brian?
All right, thanks, Corey. All right, as Corey just mentioned, everybody, best people is the foundation to a championship culture. So what is that? What is best people? How does that look? What goes into somebody being called best people? Anybody?
The folks that most embody your standards
or believe in your core
values
and your talent.
Was that Brandon?
Yeah.
All right, good answer, Brandon. Thank you for that. Yeah, so you're looking at the Venn diagram there. The first piece of that is talent, right? Think of all the different roles we have here at Ameren, from our field folks, our linemen, our LHOs, to our leadership people, to our engineers, and on and on. Okay, it requires talent, and I believe we have a lot of talent at Ameren. And we can be extremely successful with talent. We can even win in the short term, if you want to think about it that way, on just talent alone. But to sustain that and to really be successful long term, we need more than just talent. We need best people to not only have talent, but they also must embody the core values of the organization. So we'll go ahead and show that here. There you go. And so there you have it. Best people needs talent for sure, but we must embody the core values of the organization. Okay, so here's a quote, guys, and this is from Warner Baxter from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit in August of 2020. And there, Warner made the statement, our values should drive everything we do. Okay, I'm going to repeat it again. Our values should drive everything we do. So what we want to do now, we want to go to our second breakout session. Write down Warner's statement, please. Our values should drive everything we do. Okay, and again, when you go to your breakout, we'll need to know who a spokesperson is, so take care of that first thing. And then once everybody's there, go ahead and start talking. And what I'd like you to discuss is, what is the implied tasks in Warner's statement? What is the implied tasks in Warner's statement? Okay, we'll go to breakout room, then we'll come back and we'll share just like we did last time. So Don, when you're ready, take us away. All right, guys, looks like we're all back. Thank you, Don, for getting us back safely. Okay, so who are my spokespeople? What was an implied task in Warner's statement?
I'll go.
All right, Brandon.
So the implied statement was our values should drive everything we do. We talked about our core values. The core values, that if we truly believe in our core values, it would come almost second nature to us. We wouldn't even really have to think about it as long as we're a good person. And we talked a lot about how many core values that Amerant actually has, which is quite a lot. We even talked a little bit on how we would boil them down to what top three we would be thinking that overseed all of the values out of them. And just having good morals. If you're a good person, you're gonna drive all these values home. You won't even have to think about it.
Yeah, really good answer, Brandon. Thank you for that. Guys, if you're not on mute, would you make sure everybody's on mute? If you're not talking, thank you. Yeah, and that's a really good answer, Brandon. You know, in the book, it talks about core values is who we are, and if you can't be it, you can't be one of us. And so again, I think it is important that we all know the core values. You know, if it's gonna drive everything we do, we need to know what those values are, right? But like you said, it's us, it's second nature, it's who we are as Amerant employees. So really good answer. Who's another spokesperson?
I'll jump in and share what I shared with Don, and we talked about was, you know, from a standpoint of leaders in the company, knowing our values, educating on those values, and championing those values are what we're tasked with. And one of the things that you know, from my perspective is that no matter how painful it is to us, or no matter how painful it is to us as a team, we should always do the right thing. Always do the right thing, no matter what it is. And that goes back to the value of integrity, and then hold others to that same standard, which is the value of accountability.
Yeah, great answer, Jason. You're right. And we're going to get into the values here in just a second. But you're right. I think to your point, that's, you know, in Warner's statement. Our values should drive everything we do. And with that is doing the right thing. So for sure, great answer there. Julio, you want to go next?
Yeah, we just made 4 really simple points. They are the values. The implied is that they should be known, they're non-negotiable, and every action should be driven by those core values. It's just that simple.
That's very simple and right on the money. You guys are making my job easy. You get excellent job there. Okay, so we all agree that, you know, again, they drive what we do, and therefore we need to know them. Who can name all 8 core values?
Go, Crystal.
Crystal was bragging in the breakout room, so it's your floor, Crystal.
Crystal, can you do it without reading them?
I can try.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want you to try.
Okay. Safety and security, integrity, respect, it starts with a D. Diversity. I've got an acronym in my head and I can't remember it. Commitment, accountability, stewardship, teamwork.
Where do anybody have any gaps to fill in for Crystal?
I feel like I
Stewardship,
missed one, but
respect.
maybe I just didn't hear it. Jacobs, go ahead.
What did she miss? Respect?
No,
Nope.
she got them all. It was just a couple little things. I didn't know if anybody picked up on them.
She
Commitment
said
to
security
excellence.
instead of stewardship.
No,
Commitment
No,
to
the first
excellence.
one is safety and
Commitment
security.
to excellence.
There you
Commitment
go.
to excellence and
Yeah,
Good job.
diversity,
that part.
equity, and inclusion.
Good job. That was very good. I'd give her, Omri, if you're keeping score, I'd give Crystal a 92. A 92.
Is that out of 100 or 200, Corey?
Well, it's better than we've seen in some other sessions.
This is true. Yeah. So guys, here's a little table there with the values listed, and then kind of a couple of words on what they mean or how they're defined. And this came out in an email from Warner on January 7th, the day after the incidents that took place at the Capitol building in Washington. So he basically just sent out an email saying, you know, these are our values, this is who we are. And so again, it just kind of reinforces his statement of our values should drive everything we do, and this is who we are right here. So as y'all mentioned, if it's going to drive what we do, we need to know it, right? And not just us, our field workers need to know. I think we all would admit there's probably some gaps here and we have to get better. So just to kind of understand a little better, I don't know, John Gisher, tell me what integrity looks like for a lineman out there. Maybe normal day shift, out on the weekend, out at there midnight, whatever. Tell me how integrity looks to you when we think about it in terms of a lineman.
Well, first of all, I think you look towards your customer and how you treat them. You know, coming from where I'm located at down here, I've always tried to, you know, treat people equally. It's a lot of how should I say this? A very, very low income area, and I feel like I've always done that, treated people fairly. That's the main thing. Just take care of people, and that's where I was kind of driving earlier when I was in my group, that there's a lot of these values that we could combine with each other. If you give respect to people, no matter who they are, I think you're inclusive. You know, you're being inclusive there. You're also showing diversity. The other thing is to do the right thing by what your safety rules are. That would be your second thing, and then just make sure that you do a good job on a daily basis.
Yeah, great answer, John. I agree a little bit. Our values, there is some overlap there, but maybe to ensure we've got, you know, every corner covered. That's why we have as many as we do. But for sure, I agree there's some overlap. And then I think you really hit the nail on the head, John. And I think it just comes down to, at least for this one here, do the right thing, right? Whatever that is, whether it's taking care of yourself, following a policy, how you interact with a customer, whatever it might be, do the right thing out there, whether anybody's watching you or not. So nice job with that, Gish. All right,
Brian,
Corey.
can I add to that? I think another piece of that is just being honest. Don't try and bullcrap your way through something. Just be honest about it. If you know something, you know something. If you don't know it, tell folks you don't know it, and you get back to them. That type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. There's nothing wrong with saying that. I agree totally. So nice comment there. We got one more slide I want to show.
Can I say one thing, Brian?
Of course.
The issue that came up in my small group in the breakout session, John, do you want to describe what happens? I mean, you brought this up. If we all have different definitions for integrity or one of the other core values. John Gisher.
Yeah, it doesn't have to do with just this. It has to do with anything. I may look at integrity like one thing, like I just said. Then we can pull Julio up, and he's going to have a different thing of it. Jeff Jacobs will have a different, take on it. I don't feel we don't have the same message all the time when we talk about values, when we talk about safety rules, when we talk about new policies and stuff, because it's always seems like it's given by first line supervisors, or even, when Jason Klein says something, he may be giving his point of view to where Brian's given a different opinion of, slightly how it can affect his group. It's not one solid joint message that we're giving to all of our employees all the time.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up, John, and then to Brian, what Brian's about to talk about is, we have to be very clear and have that common definition or that common understanding of who we are. It can't be, well, what is your take on safety? And what's your take on safety? No, it's what's Ameren's take on safety. Like how do we define it? And who knows right off the top of your head, like what's one of the key points in our definition of safety? I'll give you a hint. It was on the previous slide.
Never compromise.
100%. If that's the one thing you remember, then okay, if time is an issue, or if weather's an issue, or if this customer's breathing down my neck, no, never compromise. Brian?
Yeah, thanks for that, Corey. Okay, so I want to share this one last slide with you guys. And this is from Bill Damp, who's a former Ameren Corporate Safety Director. And I want to thank Amy Crum for sharing this story with us. But Amy told this story that this was a statement from Bill, and Bill would use this not just at work, but also his daughters, when they would come to him with an issue or a problem they were having and looking for some guidance. His answer to them would be what you're seeing right here. Decisions are easy when values are clear. And I think that's a really powerful statement. Again, our core values is who we are, not just at work, it's at home too. We don't check in at 7 o'clock and have values and at 3 go home. Really, the best people, that's who we are all the time. And so I think, again, I think his statement's powerful, and I think it's important for us to know our values, as we've stated, but also all of our workforce needs to know them, because we all know that. Picture the crew leader or the LHO out there, and something in the job requires him to decide which fork in the road to take. When you look at Bill's statement here, decisions are easy when values are clear. Again, that backs up what Warner said, that our values should drive everything we do. So just wanted to use that slide and wrap up that part of the session. Corey?
Thanks, Brian. And as we transition from best people to now having goals and standards, I do want to stop the share here and just tell you a story. We hear about the kids these days all the time, and you heard me say it earlier in the presentation. Who has said, by a show of hands, man, the kids these days, in that nasally kind of negative connotation, or heard it in the past couple of weeks? Anybody? Okay, Brian has used it, Crystal has used it, Jeff. All right, almost every single hand goes up. We've either said it or heard it. And it's so common to just I'm going to go to a basketball game tonight, and I'm going to hear it. I'm going to hear, man, the kids these days aren't tough. They don't know what it means to work hard. They don't communicate well. They're always looking at their phones, right? They think everything's going to be given to them. They're entitled. You will never hear anybody at the program talk about the kids these days in a negative way like that. It's because of kids like PFC Potter, my driver, who took us home, who got us out of the kill zone that day, that it proved to me and to the rest of my teammates that the kids these days are not different from the kids in your parents and in your grandparents' generation. Their DNA is the same. It's not the kids who are different, it's us. And I'm taking full responsibility along with everybody on this call. It's parents, it's teachers, coaches, and business leaders, corporate leaders, supervisors, superintendents. We've mixed up goals and standards. And so as we get into what the difference is here, everything becomes a goal here in U.S. society. And you can complain about society right along with the kids these days. Everything becomes a goal. Well, what's the problem with that? Every family has goals. Every business has goals. What do they want to do? Earn revenue. Businesses have to earn revenue, so that's going to be a goal. Families want to have nice cars, maybe want to pay off those cars, send their kids to school, trade school, college. But we all have goals. Even my 17-year-old son, who is like failing every class, he has goals. He wants to have plenty of money to go out with his friends and a nice truck to do it in. And right now he's got the most ridiculous looking Jeep Cherokee you've ever seen. He's got goals and he's going to bear down to accomplish those goals. But what are his standards? If I go down to his room and he's sleeping in and he's late for school and I say, "Hey, Nolan, why are you not at school right now?" And this happens, okay? This is my life. And he wakes up and he's like, "Oh, my phone died. You know, my alarm was set, I swear." I'm like, okay. And if I say to him, "Nolan, you know what? Why don't you just try again tomorrow? Try again tomorrow to accomplish that goal of getting to school on time." He will never go anywhere in life, because elite teams, championship cultures have both goals and standards, and they know the difference. Failing to make it to school on time, that's failing to meet a standard. And it's a choice Nolan makes when he goes to bed, whether he sets that alarm or not, whether he gives his sister, "Hey, wake me up. Make sure I make it to school or not." It's a choice Nolan makes. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Corey. And as Corey just pointed out, it's mission critical that we understand the difference between goals and standards. So, Wes Burris, what's the difference between a goal and a standard?
Sorry, getting off mute.
Okay.
Goals are something we can fall back on if we don't accomplish it every day. Standards are expectations to reach those goals.
So yeah, a goal is something we want to achieve, right? And if we miss our goal, we'll reattack it next week.
Yeah.
Standards, though, have a consequence, right? If we don't make that standard, it's just not, well, we didn't meet our standard. You know what? Just try harder next time. No, there's a consequence that must be enforced when we fall short of a standard. Rob, what's another example, difference between a goal and a standard?
I think we talked about a little bit when we talked about our values. The standard is the non-negotiable. The standard is something that we have to strive to meet, and like you said, it has a consequence. Versus a goal, I feel like standards are very ingrained. Not very often do we change a standard, but on goals we can definitely adjust our goals depending on, you know, if we're meeting them too easily, or maybe you know, if we have to scale them back a little bit. There's always an opportunity to reattack a goal versus a standard.
Yeah, right, Rob. Yeah, so like you said, goals is something we want to attack. We might change it. If we're hitting it too easy, we might raise the goal to make it a little harder, that kind of thing. So it's what we want to achieve. And as you mentioned, the standard is the behavior we hold each other accountable to while we attack the goal, right?
I can share something that we mentioned in our group. I guess like an example is the goal is 95% ESRT, but the standard is you put in your ESRT every time. You might not make 95%, but if you put it in, it's a consequence when you don't.
Yeah. Good, Langston. Thanks for that.
Goals,
Yeah, that's the behavior we
Goals
expect.
are your performance. Goals are the performance. Standards are the behaviors.
Yep. That's right. That's right. Good. Very good, guys. Corey, do you have one you want to add to this?
Well, I just want to make sure, and I'll flash the slide up there for you to discuss, but one thing I would add is that a lot of times we talk about not meeting the standard, and I'm guilty of that too. Dave Wakeman said something the other day, though, that woke me up a little bit. He said, clearly, we have hundreds of coworkers meeting and exceeding our standards every day, or else we would have people dying every day or every week. And I was like, well, yeah, and we must. But we talk about the folks that are not meeting the standard. So as leaders, it's very challenging, and I'm challenging you right now, highlight the ones that are. If we're positively reinforcing when folks are meeting and exceeding those standards, we'll see it more. and highlighting what right looks like. Then we see right over here on this crew too. That would be the only thing I would add, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Corey, for that. Yeah, when we talk about standards, you're right. We go to, all right, what happens when we don't meet a standard, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about the many times we do meet it. So thank you for that comment. The only thing I'd add, guys, I think we covered about everything. I know we talked about goals can change, and we've seen that, right? Our C2C numbers, for example, our target last year was what it was, and this year it's up higher. They raised it by a few percentage points. I don't remember, but so there's an example of goals changing. I think standards can change too, though. I think Rob touched on this a little bit. I think it's important to talk about, though. Yeah, we can raise a standard, right? We can make it higher, but we would never want to lower the standard. So just wanted to wrap it up with that slide there on the differences between goals and standards. So what I do want to ask then too, Crystal, what is a standard at Ameren? Can you name one standard at Ameren?
Why do you hate me?
I don't.
What is the standard at Ameren? I'm drawing a blank, so I was taking notes.
Well, teamwork's one of our values, so who can help their teammate out?
Yeah,
Maybe in the safety world, it's doing a circle of safety when you get in your vehicle.
It should be.
That's a standard.
Every time you go to park, you back in.
Boom. Good one. Good one, Brandon.
How about one more?
Following WPA.
Yep. Yeah, good, guys. Okay, Corey.
Yeah, just so I know, and I can be part of the conversation, I'm drawing a blank on WPA.
Worker
protection.
protective insurgents.
Okay, so these are standards.
Yes.
Okay, good. I hadn't heard that one yet.
It's like switching. It's like a clearance, or if you get a hazard on a line.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And those are the kind of standards that if we fail to meet them, then people actually could die, right?
100%.
Corey, in other industries, it's references like tagging out equipment, that type of thing.
Okay. So to dial it in and focus it a little bit more specifically to the group, what does a standard look like, or a couple of standards that you would expect to see in a morning meeting? And I know all of your morning meetings look different because of what we have to do for COVID, but what standards do you expect to see there?
People are there, they're on time and paying attention to the meeting.
Okay.
I've got one that I've been dealing with lately, and it started back up at people eating and not ready for work at 7 o'clock, eating their breakfast. Pet peeve of mine.
We're slipping back into the old ways, huh? How does that happen?
I haven't been there for a while, but it's going to change.
Exactly, Brandon. This right here is the best thing that's been said, because what Brandon's highlighting is, hey, we're lagging here. We're coming up short on this standard, and I'm seeing it. And so how did that happen? Because the guy to his left or the gal to his right let him do it 3 months ago, right? Let him show up without his boots tied. And then the next day, another person showed up and they got their boots kicked up, eating a snack while the safety message is going on. And then the next day, 3 guys are doing it. And now here Brandon is, and he's got complete disarray, right? Okay, what is one more standard for a morning meeting? Think about how we conduct those morning meetings.
Not be on your phone.
Okay, so nobody's on their phone, right? Nobody should be on their phone, and I've seen that. What else? How do we conduct that meeting? How about the supervisor? What standards do we hold our supervisors to?
Being in there on time.
Okay, of course, the supervisor better be on time, right? If he expects or she expects to hold anyone accountable. I'm cut. Yep.
Being clear and command the room.
Okay, so be clear and command the room. And kind of what I'm getting at, Jason, good answer, is that be prepared, because you won't command the room if you show up and it's the first time that you've looked at the safety message and you're kind of donning your readers, which I can make fun of because I now technically need them, according to my wife. You're donning your readers to read this message that is totally unfamiliar to you. Will you command the room then, Jason Simic?
No, if you're not prepared, you don't command the room.
No, I'm dialing out. As a lineman, I'm done. Not listening to another word you're saying, just to be real. And I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but if you don't command that room and show that you're prepared, and hey, I'm prepared for anything. I'm prepared for these guys not to receive my message well. And so then what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to ask that person a question. Has that ever happened to anybody in this room? A message not received well? Brandon, what do you do in that moment?
Sometimes I get quiet and they may start looking at me like, hey, why did you stop? Or a lot of times I'm the one that starts asking questions, and more likely than not, they're going to be on their toes because they don't want to be the one to be having to answer the question.
Yeah, that's a good technique. One more question and then we got to move on. What about a standard on a job site? One example of a standard that you would expect to see on a job site.
Cones out.
Job
Okay.
brief.
Job
Boom
brief.
up, wheel chalk set down.
Okay. And how do you know, Wes, how do you know if that job brief was conducted?
You can ask, or you can interrogate essentially the crew, make sure everybody's talking the same, about the briefing, about the discussion. You can look for completeness.
Okay. All good techniques. What's the program word for interrogate?
Debrief.
Investigate.
Nope. Back brief. Do your own little back brief. Hey, the crew leader conducted a job brief. So if I show up as a supervisor or superintendent or director, hey, apprentice, what were the safety hazards that you guys identified on the job brief? I don't even need to have the job brief out. I can just ask him. And then if he doesn't know, or he says some things that aren't on the job brief, I know that it wasn't conducted. So however it was filled out, it wasn't conducted. Brian?
All right, thank you, Corey. Thanks for that, guys. Nice interaction there. So we've talked about best people and we've talked about goals and standards. The remaining building block on our way to championship culture is commitment. And so what I'm asking each of you to do is have a daily commitment to lead with courage and to have the courage to live your values. And again, our values is who we are. It defines us, period. So I'd like you to take a second, guys, and think about your experience at Rend Lake, okay? And as you do that, would it surprise you to know that the core values of the program are selfless, tough, and discipline? When you think back and you remember how Corey and Jamie and other program leaders carried themselves, would you say you saw those values present? I did. Okay, that needs to be us. Our coworkers need to see us that way. They need to see us as leaders having the courage to live those values, and we carry ourselves that way. The next piece is, I think it's critically important that our coworkers also understand our values and that they live them as well. Again, we talked about how behaviors need to meet our standards and our standards reinforce our values. Kind of like Brandon was just saying about the breakfast during the meeting or whatever it was, the boots not on, etc. Okay, it takes courage, but when these things happen, we have to call it out. We have to fix it that very first time. If you see a behavior not meeting a standard and you don't take action, you've just reset the standard. You've told the employee, I know it's 7:05 and you're just getting here, but I don't want the fight today. I'm not gonna say anything. You've just told them it's okay to do that, whether it's showing up late or having the breakfast or whatever it is. I tell my team all the time, they get tired of hearing it, but I think our inactions actually can speak louder than our actions. Don't look the other way. When someone's falling short of a standard, fix it right there. Remember, our standards reinforce our core values. Our core values is who we are. Like Warner said, our core values should drive everything we do. When we have a culture where behaviors meet the standards and the standards reinforce the core values, we will have that championship culture. Corey?
Thanks, Brian. Couldn't have said that better as far as the way that our standards drive, reinforce our core values. 5 minutes before this picture was taken, these 9 Taliban fighters were trying to kill me and my teammates with every fiber of their being. So if you zoom in, you can see that there's an incredible amount of anger built up inside me still, even after the firefight was pretty much over and we had captured and detained these 9 fighters. With that anger, which is an emotion, with that emotional response to this situation, I am fired up because they were trying to take me out while I have 5 kids and a wife waiting for me to come home. So I am just, in every sense of the word, you would look at this from the outside and think, oh man, this is a dangerous situation to put this one American service member in alone. Why would we put an angry Marine in a room with 9 Taliban fighters after he's just been shot at by them? That's dangerous. Well, it's only dangerous if you lack culture. If your team lacks culture, then yes, it's dangerous. I'm going to tell you right now, you can give me, I don't talk about awards. I don't talk about accolades that I received in the military. You'll never hear me say it. But I'm proud in that moment right there. I never even thought about doing anything that would compromise my integrity. The culture of the Marine Corps starts with honor. That's our first core value. The way we define honor is having integrity in everything that we do. And in that moment, I did not even consider something that would compromise that. When we get to the point where we ask a coworker, well, why did you do this? Why did you take this action? And he or she either relates it back to one of our core values, said, you know what? I was just thinking about never compromising on safety. And that's why I did it, despite the fact that we weren't going to get the job done on time. That's the answer that we're looking for. That starts to get at the fact that we're getting our culture down to the very lowest level. I know you all understand it, but does every single person in our work group understand what it means to be one of us? Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. That's a great story. So guys, again, it's hard to, kind of parallel exactly what Corey's story exactly to one of ours, but that very well could be an LHO of ours out there, and who knows what the situation is, but it could be such a situation that this person's frustrated or they're angry or they're rushed or whatever emotion could be going through them. But none of that makes it okay to compromise on our values. We don't take shortcuts. We do the right thing, whether we're out there by ourselves, the supervisor's with us, teammates are with us, whatever. And here's a quote right there. Ultimately the team will achieve whatever standards they set for themselves and they'll prove themselves even when no one's watching. Okay. So again, to have a championship culture, it takes the things we've talked about. The behaviors we accept must meet our standards that reinforce our core values. When we do that, when our coworkers do that, without being told to do it, without anybody watching, we'll know we have that championship culture we desire. Omri?
Thanks, Brian. So teammates, we have about 4 minutes, and what we're going to do is first conduct a quick back brief and review today's material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call you at random. give you about 3 to 5 seconds to come up with the answer. The first question, and I want a direct and exact answer for this question. And I will go ahead and ask Julio. Please describe the 2 components that make for the best people for our organization.
One is talent, and the other one is the adherence to the core values.
Awesome. Excellent. Perfect answer. Thank you. Question number 2, and I will head this one over to Brandon. So please, in your words, how would you explain to your team the difference between a goal and a standard?
I think you're on mute, Brandon.
All right, sorry about that. I would let them know that a standard is something that they're expected to do, that we're all expected to do, and it is set in stone, and that a goal is something that we're going to strive for, and if we can't achieve that goal, that we can always reattack it the next day.
Awesome. Excellent. So yeah, to clarify that, for you guys, standards are non-negotiable. That would be a term that you're going to hear us use quite often, and that's how we go about it. Let's go into 3 tasks that we're going to view as for next week and our homework task. So the first task that I'm going to give out is going to require a volunteer. The volunteer is going to be the lead on that. And the task is communicate with the team and come up with a team name that starts with the letter E and is an animal that could be found in Illinois. So team name is going to start with the letter E, and it's going to be an animal that starts with the letter E that could be found in Illinois. Who can take the lead on this one for me?
I think Mr. Jacobs said he'd do that, Omri.
Awesome. Perfect. I put my email in the chat, so please contact me by end of business on Thursday. The second task, and we're going to go through this quick. I want you to think and write down the one person at Ameren that best exemplifies your core values and the Ameren culture. What I want you to do is, by the end of the day, give that person a call and hold them accountable to being great, to being a great teammate and embodying our culture. The third thing is, let's make sure that for next week, our next session, session number 2, we are going to review section number 7. So section number 7 of the book, effective communication. We're out of order, but that is how we are going to do it. We are running out of time and we want to close it out. Usually we would be conducting a back brief, but if there are any questions, you'll see that my contact info is in the group chat. If there are any questions, please feel free to contact me. On that note, I would like to hand this over to Mr. Craig Gilson. Craig, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Omri. AIC leadership is committed to the concepts that are a focus of the program. We're making not only a financial commitment, but we're also making a major time commitment. And the time commitment is not only your time, but our time as well. We believe the concepts that are a focus of the program are essential to our success. The program is just not focused on the first line leaders. All of us as leaders are expected to participate in a program and develop these skills. A lot of you may not be aware that Dave, George, Eric, Steve, and I have someone from the program that are assigned to us as a mentor. Representatives of the program are on many of the calls that we conduct throughout the week. We meet with our mentor on a weekly basis to get some feedback on how we conduct ourselves during the calls. Also provide us feedback on what they're seeing in the field and what we need to do as leaders to improve our performance as it's viewed by the field people. So we're committed to the concepts of the program, are here to do what we can to accomplish the mission and take care of the team. We as leaders drive our culture. So let me know how I can help you not only drive the culture, but accomplish your mission and take care of your team. So with that, I thank everybody for your participation. Brian?
Thank you for that, Craig. And again, thanks, everybody. This was a really good session. Thank you for being engaged and taking part. Like I said earlier, the goal was let's be better when it's over than when it started, and I truly believe we are. So thanks for everybody. Thanks for what you do. Have a good day and be safe.
See y'all. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys. Thank you.
See you.
Have a
Thanks.
good day.
Bye, Brian.
Bye.